Well, I've got to say that is a very, very hard act to follow. And I'm not going to do it any justice, I must admit. But I will start off by saying, as I did last year, Shalom. Ami seek liot po hayom ba Tel Aviv echem. Ami meve berechot meha elaman hai shalanu. Shmi Adrian ve'ani rosh peelot tesot ba'i. I imagine I've got less than the allocated time now, and I'm not surprised because that was actually a fascinating story. So I will start by saying thank you very much to Gal and the team at JetSet for the invitation, and for the production team for making this conference such an amazing success, and I hope to be here next year continuing our support. So I'm from the Isle of Man, I'm the head of flight operations, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm going to ask a question. How do you enable appropriate payment of operating costs while appropriately protecting the public from illegal public transport? We have to admit and recognise that illegal public transport is a blight on our business, on our community and its reputation. The recent high-profile events of the footballer Emilio Sala is just one recent example. And at the Isle of Man, we take it very, very seriously. We take a robust stance on this, and we investigate all accusations of illegal public transport, but we do ask for them to be in writing, because we have found over the years that many are just malicious or inaccurate. We recognise that there are legitimate reasons for the appropriate payments of operating costs in the business aviation world. For example, an aircraft on our register is owned by a business. The owner of that business wants to use the aircraft to fly in a personal capacity, maybe at the weekend, to their villa by the sea. But if the owner pays the operating costs under the old rules, that could be construed as commercial air transport because of the A&O definition. Yet we know this practice happens because it is the way our industry works. And so in conjunction with the aviation community, some of which is on the Isle of Man, one of the individuals is actually here present. I'm very pleased that he is here because he can correct me if I'm wrong. We actually wrote new legislation. It was the Civil Aviation Registration and Marking Order 2022, and it came into force on the 1st of August. And it enables the appropriate payment of operating costs. So the new rules came in on the 1st of August 2022, so any certificate of registration issued on or after that date takes the benefit of the new operating rules, and also gives the legal certainty that it provides. So owners and operators, they want legal certainty, are encouraged to actually apply for a new certificate of registration. If you want more details, I have copies of this book, RP68. It's at the booth. Please come and take one. It provides all the information that you may need. Firstly, though, let's be very clear. Commercial air transport is not permitted on an Isle of Man registered aircraft. You cannot place an Isle of Man registered aircraft on an AOC. Simply not allowed. What I'm going to say from this point on is only applicable to those who have a CFR issued on or after the 1st of August. Firstly, it's essential that the definition of commercial air transport is clearly understood, so that the scope of the prohibitions can be complied with. Commercial air transport means an aircraft operation involving the transport of passengers, cargo or mail for hire, remuneration or other valuable consideration. The items in italics are in addition to the ICAO definition. So if the flight does not involve the transport of passengers, cargo, mail for hire or any valuable consideration, remuneration or hire, it's not commercial air transport. Very simple. Which allows us to enable aerial work on the MIC register, subject to the appropriate permission from the registry. Definitions are critical, and the previous definition used the terms remuneration and valuable consideration. Well, what do they mean? Remuneration means money or other financial compensation. Valuable consideration means a right, interest, profit or benefit, forbearance, detriment, loss or responsibility accruing, given, suffered or undertaken under an agreement that is of more than a nominal nature. That's why we have lawyers, thankfully. So you may be thinking that these definitions would actually prohibit reasonable payments, payments which have no impact on public safety, and yet this is what the business aviation community needs. So the registration and marking order explicitly permits certain reasonable payments, but again, it's only applicable if your CR is issued on or after the 1st of August 2022. Well, what are these explicit enablements? They're all published in RP68, and I'm going to briefly talk through some of them now. The first is flying training. Payment of costs may be given for flights undertaken solely for the purpose of flight training, examination, or testing, because they are reasonable costs. Next one is self-fly hire. Remuneration or valuable consideration given by the pilot in command for the self-fly hire of an aircraft is allowed. However, the pilot must then not receive valuable consideration or remuneration to transport others. Groups of companies. RP68, the registration and marking order, allows for groups of companies for valuable remuneration or valuable consideration given by one company to another, that is, its holding company, its subsidiary, or another subsidiary of the same holding company. These are all allowed. They are reasonable business costs. Charitable flights. Aircraft can be used for charity flights, and remuneration or valuable consideration can be given or promised to a registered charity, as long as it is not the legal owner of the aircraft's registered owner, or the aircraft operator, and permission from the Isle of Man CIA must be obtained. It allows for the sharing of direct costs for light aircraft only. What is a light aircraft? Under our law, it is one that has a max takeoff weight of less than 5.7 tons, is not a turbojet, and is less than 9 seats. So what does it allow for? It allows for the direct cost of the flight, where it's not a large and turbojet aircraft, providing no more than 6 persons, including the pilot, can be carried, and the direct cost must be shared by all occupants, including the flight crew. But no information about the flight can be published or advertised before the flight commences. This prohibits the Wingley model. It is not allowed. We do not want that on our register. Payment of operating costs is permitted. It can be given or promised by the registered aircraft owner or the aircraft operator or a person contracted by the aircraft operator to deliver services for the operation, management and control of the aircraft on their behalf. These are reasonable costs. Private dry leases are permitted. Remuneration or valuable consideration given or promised by a lessee of the aircraft under a private leasing condition is permitted, subject to the lessee having a right to possess the aircraft and control of the aircraft operator. It is a reasonable cost. But a private dry lease arrangement has a specific definition which is on the screen. I'm not going to read it out. But I will say this. The minimum period of a dry lease has not been specified in our legislation. But we would investigate any short-term leases to identify the right to possess the aircraft and control of the operator to ensure it was an appropriate dry lease. But short-term wet leases are not permitted. Joint ownership of an aircraft is permitted, provided that the share of the ownership is not less than 20%. It used to be 5%. It is not anymore, it is now 20%. The exception relates, though, to a single aircraft. It is aircraft registration specific. Not specific registration is not allowed. We do not allow fractional ownership. Ownership of multiple aircraft can be possible, but the test must be passed for each and every individual aircraft. Demonstration flights, the last one. Demonstration or delivery flights. Valuable consideration or remuneration given or promised for the direct cost of a demonstration flight for a pre-purchase inspection, including the positioning, or a delivery flight necessary to facilitate an aircraft sale or lease is permitted. but records must be kept, and the details of the person or company providing the remuneration or valuable consideration must also be kept. But recurrent demonstration flights are not permitted. We had an incident where a certain individual claimed a flight every year to the same horse racing competition was a demonstration flight. Well, that individual suitably re-educated, and it never happened again. So fractional ownership is interpreted differently across the aviation industry. We have not used this phrase in our definition or in our legislation or guidance. So fractional ownership is not permitted. So how do you enable appropriate payments of operating costs while appropriately protecting the public? You make the definition of CAT black and white by clearly defining what exceptions are allowed. If it meets the definition of CAT and there's no exception, it's simply not allowed. There is no such thing as grey charter. It's illegal, and we don't permit it on our register, and we take a robust stance. There's copies of these at the booth. Please come and take them, because I really don't want to carry them back in my luggage back to the Isle of Man. So please come and take one. Thank you for your attention, and I very much look forward now to Richard coming and finishing the conference. Thank you.